They thought she was just a quiet tech contractor, fixing busted scopes, adjusting zeros, never saying a word, until someone tampered with her rifle, until a sniper went down in Denver from two 800-meter same style, same signature. That's when she stopped hiding, unwrapped the black tape from her forearm, and for the first time in 6 years, Raven 1 returned to the battlefield. Before we begin, where are you watching this from? And what's the most powerful story of redemption you've ever seen or felt? Welcome to Grateful Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness are told. Let's uncover what really happened. It was 6:07 when the cold snapped into Sarah Mitchell's bones. The Colorado wind bit hard that morning, sweeping across the ridgeline behind Fort Carson like it was searching for weakness. She didn't flinch. She hadn't flinched in years. She stood alone near the shooting range's far edge, adjusting the wind flag with a gloved hand. Behind her, the instructors laughed over coffee. They barely noticed her, the civilian contractor with the tool belt, the quiet one who patched weapons, fixed scopes, and never said a damn word unless asked. To most of them, she was still just tool girl. That name came from Brad Coleman, a hotshot lieutenant, born with a tan and a trust fund, who fancied himself the next Chris Kyle. He had been mocking her all week. Careful with that scope. Mitchell, he'd sneer. Wouldn't want the real shooters to trip over your screwdrivers. But Sarah never looked up. She didn't need to. At 33, Sarah had learned a rule the hard way: let the noise pass. Let the boys talk. It was only ever silence that carried weight. That day's training exercise involved the Barrett M107, a semi-auto 50 BMG used for long-range interdiction. Coleman's team was up for a demo shot at 200 meters, just far enough to wound the ego. But something went wrong. On the first trigger pull, the weapon locked mid-cycle, failure to chamber. Torres, the range sergeant, walked over, frowning. He glanced towards Sarah. Mitchell, mind taking a look? She was already moving. No hesitation. Torres, one of the few who didn't treat her like a ghost, handed over the rifle. Think the recoil springs catching. Sarah nodded, inspecting the breech without speaking. Her fingers moved quickly, 2 clicks, 1 test rack, chamber check. The Barrett was back in service, but she didn't hand it back. Instead, she set it down at position 3, dropped to prone, and adjusted the bipod like she'd done it 1,000 times. Coleman scoffed. What's this? Tool girl wants to play hero. Torres didn't answer. He just watched. Sarah slipped off her glove and pressed her bare hand into the frozen gravel. Her breath slowed. Her cheek kissed the stock. Across the canyon, a white silhouette had been placed at 310 meters, the target half shrouded by morning haze. Wind was pushing right to left, 15 kilometers per hour. The humidity was climbing. Visibility, just passable. There was no ballistic computer, no spotter, no voice in her ear. Only her. She took in one breath, then another, letting her heart slow beneath the weight of stillness. 1, 2, 3. Her finger curled with exactly 1.2 pounds of pressure. The Barrett thundered like God had punched the sky. Then silence. 3 seconds. 5. 7. The target blinked red. A center mass hit dead center. Nobody spoke. Not Torres, not Coleman, not the instructors behind the glass. Just 20 full seconds of stunned, bone-deep silence. Then Torres, eyes wide, murmured under his breath, Jesus Christ, that's legendary. Sarah stood slowly, dusted her hands, and walked back toward the tool station without a word. Coleman's mouth hung open. One of the junior cadets stammered something about luck, but no one echoed him. They had seen the shot, and more importantly, they had seen her. Behind the range building, 50 meters away, stood a man in a long black coat. He hadn't spoken to anyone all morning, just watched. Colonel Jake Morrison, counterintelligence, former theater officer in Syria, quiet, precise, unshakable. He rarely visited the range. But today, he was there for a reason. And when Sarah lifted her arm to adjust the sling on her shoulder, the bunched fabric of her sleeve rolled slightly, revealing the faint edge of a black ink tattoo along her forearm. A raven, wings extended, 7 feathers. Morrison didn't blink. He whispered the name as if it hurt to say Raven 1. At 1:45 a.m., Fort Carson was asleep. Snow tapped gently against the steel siding of the long-range shed. The temperature had dropped below -5, and the moon was a dim smear behind low clouds. But Sarah Mitchell was awake. She sat cross-legged on the roof of the old water tower, 800 meters from the empty range. Her scope was locked onto a single patch of gravel near the control shed, the one with the broken floodlight. She had aligned it precisely with a door that hadn't creaked open in 3 years. She didn't need to see the man. She knew he would come. And when he did, stepping lightly through snow, she had already clocked the shape of his shoulders and the pattern of his gait. Left foot slightly heavier, combat limp, recent, Colonel Jake Morrison. Sarah tapped the side of her headset, activating a whisper channel. "You're 72 hours late, Colonel," she said evenly. "Question is, what does a ghost like you want with a tool girl?" He stopped, looked up at the dark water tower, smiled faintly. "You always were impossible to sneak up on." "No," she replied. "You were just predictable." Morrison didn't bother arguing. He simply pulled out a small folder from inside his coat and held it up. Even from 800 meters, Sarah recognized the seal. A red eagle, no markings, no label, top clearance. "Let's talk," he said. They met in the generator room behind the comms shed. Sarah had already checked it 3 times for hidden mics, laid chalk dust across the floorboards to mark any new footprints, and tied a hair across the latch in case someone entered before her. Morrison walked in unarmed, but Sarah's M24 rested against the wall within reach. He sat, quiet, measured. "You knew, didn't you?" he asked finally. Sarah didn't answer. "You knew I'd come after that shot." Still nothing. He set the file down, slowly slid it across the metal table. Inside, grainy photographs, target profiles, ballistic signatures. Sarah flipped through them without reacting. Page 7 stopped her hand cold. "Marcus Chen." "Raven 3, Morrison said. "Dead. 4 days ago. Denver. Hit from 2,800 meters with a .338 Lapua. 1 shot. While jogging." Sarah didn't blink. 7 quarters placed on his chest, neatly stacked. Her jaw tightened. "It was a message," Morrison said. "Old warrior sign. 7 for 7. Sarah's voice dropped, low and flat. "Who else knows? No one in command. This came from my personal channel. You kept the Damascus files," she said. "I did." He reached into his coat again and produced a second photo. It wasn't grainy. It was high-resolution satellite imagery, taken 7 years ago. It showed a black SUV in Syria, armored, moving through a war zone, and the red mist bursting through its windshield from 4,200 meters away. The world called it luck. Some said it was a drone strike, but Morrison knew better. "It was you," he said. "Operation Blackbird, the Damascus shot." Sarah closed the folder. "What do you want, Morrison?" He leaned forward. "Someone's eliminating Raven assets. Quiet, surgical, signature hits. And you think they're coming for me. I don't think. I know." In 2017, the Pentagon had authorized a program so classified it didn't officially exist. 7 operators, drawn from different branches, all ghosts in their own right. They called it Raven 7. Sarah Mitchell, Raven 1, had led them. Each kill was silent, every bullet accounted for. No missions failed, no names in headlines, until it all collapsed. Operation Damascus Storm, a classified mission buried under 6 layers of blackout. 2 team members died, 1 handler disappeared, and Sarah, she vanished too. Morrison had kept the files, all of them. Every one of the 23 kills they pulled off together. All signatures matched. All clean. But now they're not killing you for revenge, he said. They're tying up loose ends. Sarah stood, walked to the window. Who's behind it? Morrison hesitated, then said the name like a curse. Vincent Kane. The room dropped to ice. Sarah didn't turn. He was our handler. Not anymore. He runs a private firm now. Shadowhawk Solutions. Hires ex-Delta. Spetsnaz. Blackwater. Blood money. And Marcus was his first message. Morrison nodded. He'll come for you next. He wants to erase what we were. What you are. That night, Sarah sat alone in her quarters. The heating unit hummed quietly. Her rifle case sat open on the floor. She hadn't touched it. Her eyes stayed locked on the cracked phone in her palm. There was only one number she kept a private line, buried under ghost protocols. She hit the button. The line connected instantly. Sarah, a calm voice said. It's been a long time. General Hayes, she replied. My cover's blown. Silence. Vincent. Yes. A pause. Then Protocol 7 is active. Sarah's throat went tight. I'll need your help. You'll have it. Sarah closed her eyes. Hayes had been the only one who stayed after the storm. The one who buried Sarah's identity. Got her the job at Fort Carson and kept the wolves at bay. But even she knew it couldn't last forever. By 05, Sarah was gone. No goodbye. No trace. In her locker, she left only one thing, her old Fort Carson contractor badge. Bent, scratched, worthless. On the back, a message written in permanent marker. Tool girls dead. Ravens awake. Sarah didn't sleep that night. She lay fully dressed on the cot in her quarters, motionless, listening, not to sounds but to patterns. The faint buzz of fluorescent lights, the creak of air vents, the soft metallic tick from her rifle case. Nothing sounded wrong, but something felt off. At 04:07 she moved. She scanned the room with a UV flashlight. 3 tiny camera lenses glinted back, each the size of a fly's eye, tucked beneath the corner paneling, hidden inside a fake smoke sensor, and one embedded in a screw cap above her closet. Sarah smiled. It wasn't fear on her face. It was calculation. Whoever planted them used clean gloves. No fingerprints. But they missed one thing. A faint boot print on the radiator. Size 10.5. Salomon Quest 4Ds, not issued in any U.S. military unit. European contractor, most likely, and the tension in her shoulders told her this was just the beginning. She didn't report it. She didn't speak a word to Morrison or Torres. Not yet. Instead, she began the Hunter protocol. At 0500, she opened her rifle case. Her M24 had been tampered with. The trigger assembly was off-loosened by 0.2 millimeters, too subtle for most to notice. But Sarah wasn't most. She fixed it in 43 seconds, then packed it again, untouched. By 0600, she was smiling in the dining hall, sipping weak coffee, nodding to Torres across the mess. She left casually, leaving her door ajar just enough to tempt a second break-in. But Sarah didn't go back to her room. She was already on the roof. Her ghillie cloak was flattened against the HVAC system. The scope on her spotting optic was trained precisely on the reflection from her door handle. A strand of her own hair was taped across the latch, an old trick from Syria. At 0643 it moved. The hair snapped. Someone was inside. Sarah waited, breathing steady, rifle not in hand, but her eyes never left the scope. 3 minutes passed. Then a figure exited, moving confidently. No signs of fear or caution. A man in civilian clothes with tactical posture, broad shoulders, shaved head. He moved like Delta. She followed him, not physically but through angles. Cameras, glass, reflections. She stayed unseen. By order 8:30, she knew where he was sleeping. An old warehouse, 15 miles south of Fort Carson. Abandoned, No digital footprint. Classic PMC fallback. She made her move that night. Tommy Brooks never heard her coming. When he woke, he was zip-tied to a steel chair, gagged, and blinking under the glare of a workshop light. The place smelled like engine oil and rust. Sarah stood 10 feet away, arms crossed. "I know who you are," she said. "Tommy Reaper Brooks, former Delta Force, retired 2019 after Kandahar. Now working for Kane." He didn't speak. She cut the gag. "Don't waste my time. You were in my room. That means Kane thinks I'm a threat again." He stared at her, then laughed bloody. "Broken. You've got no idea how bad this is going to get." Sarah didn't blink. "Try me." Tommy coughed, then spoke slowly. "Vincent Kane's not just trying to erase Raven. He's trying to erase the record. Blackbird files. Damascus. He's bought judges, shredded evidence. But you're a loose end." "Why now?" she asked. "Because Raven 3's dead." That hit like a brick. Sarah's spine stiffened, but her face didn't change. "Marcus, 2 days ago," Tommy said. "Denver Park, 338 Lapua. Single shot, quarter coins stacked on his chest." Sarah looked down. 7 coins, 7 kills. It was how they'd marked targets in Syria. Not out of ritual, but warning. She stepped closer. "You were there." Tommy didn't answer. Sarah picked up a rusted wrench, placed it gently on the table. "One last chance. Reaper, where's Kane?" "He broke Idaho, but he's not alone. Shadowhawk has over a dozen operators on U.S. soil, contractors. No fingerprints, no oversight. And they've got your name." Sarah nodded, then walked behind him. He flinched, but instead of pain, he heard duct tape unrolling. She taped his mouth shut again, not to torture him, but because she was done talking. He lived. Barely. Sarah called an anonymous tip to Morrison, then vanished. She had names now, coordinates, a new kill list, 12 operatives, Kane at the top, and she had scores to settle. The next 72 hours moved like war. Danny Martinez, former Navy intel, now Shadowhawk sniper, died first. He never saw the 300 Win Mag round that pierced his windshield at 1-800 meters. Kyle Jensen, demolitions expert, checked into a hotel in Boulder. At 3:14 a.m., his door exploded, C4 rigged to the hinge. Clean, efficient, signature Sarah. Alex Thompson, hand-to-hand specialist, was harder. He caught her trail near Grand Junction. What followed was 7 minutes of brutal combat in a deserted alley. She left with a dislocated shoulder. He left in a body bag. Each time, she left something behind. A photograph of the body. A message in red ink. 6 years late, but I keep my promises. R1. Back at Fort Carson, Morrison stared at the images in his office. Torres stood silently at the window. "She's gone rogue," Morrison said, but there was no judgment in his voice. Torres finally turned. "No, sir. She's doing what they trained her to do, and what we couldn't." That night, Sarah sat alone in a train yard outside Cheyenne, tuning her scope under a blood-red moon. The names etched in her notebook were nearly complete. Only 5 left. And then Kane. He was the one who left them to die in Syria, who fed them intel that turned out to be traps, who cashed in their missions for politics and power. And now, he was scrubbing the world of his sins by erasing the only people who remembered. Sarah wasn't just fighting to survive. She was hunting for justice. And for the first time in 6 years, she didn't feel like a ghost anymore. She felt alive, and deadly, and finally ready to finish what they started. The storm hit just after midnight. Winds screamed across the Colorado Range, cutting sideways through the pine ridges like invisible blades. In the silence between gusts, Sarah could hear them moving 20 mercenaries, spread out across 4 elevations, sweeping the mountains for one woman. Not just any woman, a sniper they thought they could outgun. A ghost they'd tried and failed to bury. Vincent Kane had gone all in. 20 elite contractors flown in under the guise of joint training. Their IDs checked out, but their mission was darker than black. Eliminate Raven 1. Erase the last living tie to Damascus. Before the world caught wind of what Kane had done there. Sarah crouched on a ridge above Timberline Pass, wrapped in snow camo, rifle tight to her chest. Her breath barely fogged the frigid air. She'd become so still. Even the snow had stopped settling on her. A quiet click came through her earpiece. "Towers secure." Morrison's voice crackled. "I've tapped their comms. They think you're alone." Sarah smirked. She liked it better that way. 50 yards below, Torres adjusted his scope, eyes scanning west. He'd volunteered without hesitation. "I've seen what you can do, ma'am," he'd said earlier that night. "Count me in." She hadn't asked him to come, but she hadn't stopped him either. People like Torres knew the weight of silence and the price of trust. Then came the sound she'd been waiting for, 2 short static bursts on the shared Shadowhawk frequency. "They've reached the ravine," Morrison confirmed. "Split Team 5 flanking west, 8 to the north." Sarah didn't reply. She was already gone. She moved like vapor. Low crawl through snowpack, boots wrapped in sound-dampening mesh. Every breath measured, every step memorized. This was her element, not behind a desk, not in briefing rooms, but here beneath clouded stars, behind enemy lines, rifle pressed against heartbeat. The first kill came fast. One of Kane's men paused to light a cigarette. A mistake that lasted 2.3 seconds. Sarah's bullet caught him square through the orbital socket. No sound, no scream, just a thud in snow and the ember of his cigarette winking out. Torres whistled low through the mic. Jesus. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. By 01:43 a.m., 4 more were down, each from a different angle, different elevation. None had time to fire back. Kane was starting to panic. Through intercepted comms, Morrison fed her intel live. He's yelling now, asking why nobody's responded. Sarah shifted position again, this time to higher ground. She waited near a rock outcrop, wind slicing through her gloves. Visibility 200 meters, temp 20 degrees 6. Wind 45 kilometers H. Perfect. Next came the ricochet shot. Target was behind a slab of granite, shielding his vitals. But Sarah didn't need a direct line. She calculated bounce angle, adjusted 1 mil left, fired. The round skipped off a frozen ledge and struck the man clean in the throat. He never saw it coming. But Kane heard the scream over radio. He changed tactics. "Pull back. Regroup at fallback point," he ordered. He thought he could reset the board. He didn't know the board was already hers. Sarah exhaled. 16 left, and she was just getting started. An hour later, they tried to smoke her out, launched flares, fired blindly into the trees. One operative even tossed a thermal drone into the sky. She downed it with a single shot, mid-air, moving target, 900 meters. No second try needed. That was the turning point. Kane realized what he was up against. He issued a new order target change. "Bring me General Hayes. Use her as leverage." Sarah froze when she heard it. Then her eyes narrowed. It was a coward's move, but a predictable one. Kane had always used people to shield himself. Minutes later, Morrison broke in again. "They've got Hayes, escorting her into the old NORAD base. Cheyenne Mountain. The abandoned bunker." She knew the layout by heart. Sarah didn't speak. She was already running. Inside Cheyenne, Kane's men dragged Hayes into a dim corridor, cuffs on her wrists. But the general wasn't afraid. She'd expected this. As Kane stood gloating, Hayes locked eyes with a small security camera, one she knew Sarah would access. She shifted her weight slightly, then blinked once, left, twice. Right. Morse code. Sarah decoded it instantly, level 3. South corridor. No guards at ventilation shaft. That was all she needed. By 04:00 a.m., she was on the ridge above Cheyenne's south entrance. Morrison uploaded the layout to her HUD. Torres stood watch outside. Rifle raised. Raven 1, Hayes said quietly into her concealed mic. If you're hearing this, make it count. Sarah set up her shot. The angle was insane. Distance 847 meters. Wind shifting layers, 3 gradients. Elevation change, 200 feet. Temperature from 20 degrees C to plus 115 degrees C along flight path. But she wasn't afraid. She was focused. Her custom 50 BMG rifle was chambered, tuned, hand-balanced. The round hand-loaded, 800-grain tungsten core, optimized for maximum penetration. She ran her mental math again. Wind drift, spin drift, Coriolis, temp lapse, mirage factor. Every factor, every digit, locked in her brain like muscle memory. Torres radioed, voice tense. 10-second window. Kane just stepped into line of sight. Now or never. Sarah held her breath, lowered her pulse. Heart rate dropped from 76 to 42 BPM. Everything around her vanished. She squeezed the trigger. Recoil snapped against her shoulder. Muzzle flash lit the rocks. Bullet tore through sky at 3,000 feet per second. Time slowed. 6.8 seconds felt like a lifetime. Sarah never blinked. Inside the bunker, Kane raised his voice. There's no way she can make that show impact. The 50 BMG round shattered the reinforced window, tore through his vest, and split his sternum in half. He was dead before he hit the floor. Hayes didn't flinch. She looked up at the camera and whispered, "Target down." Raven 1, you just made history. Back on the ridge, Sarah exhaled. Her breath fogged the air, one final ghost in the mountain. Torres laughed softly over comms. 4,847 meters. That's a damn record. But Sarah wasn't smiling. She was staring at the sky, at the silence that followed, at the life that used to be hers, and the war that had never truly ended. The wind howled like a dying animal through the mountain pass. Sarah lay prone, body half buried in the snow, her rifle tucked against her shoulder like it was part of her rib cage. 4,847 meters. She didn't blink. She had already calculated everything by heart. Wind layers, bullet drop, pressure altitude, elevation shift. No tablet, no spotter, just instinct and memory. Her heartbeat slowed deliberately, breath sinking with each beat, 80 beats per minute, dropping, 70, 55, 42. At exactly 42 BPM, she slipped into the space between seconds where doubt couldn't reach her. Morrison whispered over comms. Window in 12 seconds. He's pacing toward the north glass. Sarah's gloved fingers curled around the trigger, applying 1 pound of pressure. She needed exactly 1.2. Any more and the shot would pull. Any less, it wouldn't fire. She exhaled, paused, squeezed. The report of the 50 BMG thundered across the frozen gorge, then silence. The bullet sliced through 3 microclimates, dancing between conflicting winds. It arced down Ear 200 feet, pierced triple-layered reinforced glass, and entered Kane's chest. Dead center. He collapsed instantly, mouth half open in shock. The words he was about to say, "There's no way she can make that show," died on his lips. His body slumped forward like a puppet with strings cut. Hayes came through comms. Target down. Raven 1, you just made history. Sarah didn't respond. She stayed in position, eyes locked through the scope. Only when Kane's guards began to scatter did she release her breath. Flight time 6.8 seconds. Kill distance 4,847 meters. The longest confirmed sniper kill in history. But that wasn't why she took the shot. It was for Marcus Chen, for everyone Kane had betrayed, for the team he left behind. Within 48 hours, Shadowhawk Solutions collapsed like wet paper. Interpol raided their Swiss accounts. Remaining operatives either fled the country or surrendered outright. The Pentagon released a statement. During a multinational training exercise, a rogue element was neutralized by UMRS. Forces. No one mentioned Raven 1. No one needed to. 3 days later, Sarah walked back through the gates of Fort Carson. No escort, no celebration. Just a civilian contractor with snow in her boots and blood behind her eyes. But the base had changed. Or maybe it was how they looked at her now. She wasn't the tool girl anymore. No one said a word when she passed. Coleman saw her walking toward the range. He didn't speak. He just stood, locked heels, and saluted. Sarah gave a small nod. Didn't break stride. Respect, in her world, was never loud. At the armory, she unlocked her usual lane. No special treatment, no fanfare. She set up 3 steel targets, 2 500 and 3 3/4 meters. She didn't need to prove anything. But sometimes, old ghosts needed closure. She loaded 3 rounds. First shot center mass, second clean hit, slightly left, third dead center, through the previous hole. Behind her, a small group of trainees had gathered. No whispers, no laughter, only silence, the kind that came from awe, not fear. Torres stepped forward, arms crossed, a grin tugging at his lip. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "I've never seen shooting like that. You're not human." Sarah didn't look away from the targets. "I'm exactly what I was trained to be," she said, then slung the rifle over her shoulder and started walking. Snow crunched beneath her boots. The mountains rose ahead. Hayes watched from the upper platform, hidden behind a tinted window. Morrison stood beside her, arms folded, eyes thoughtful. "She's back," Hayes said simply. Morrison nodded. "No, she never left." Below them, Sarah's silhouette grew smaller in the snow. She didn't need an audience. She never had. She wore her tattoo uncovered now. The black raven, wings extended, 7 feathers etched like scars. Once it was a secret, now it was a warning. Each feather no longer marked death. Now they stood for the lives she'd saved 4 surviving Raven members, 3 allies on this mission, 7 reminders that not all shadows destroy, some protect. That night, Sarah sat alone in the barracks back lot, watching the stars. She held a photograph faded and torn of her old team. Marcus, Jenna, Reed, Tyler, Hayes in the corner, unsmiling. She didn't cry. She never cried, but she sat a long time, thumb tracing each face. Then, slowly, she slid the photo into the rifle stock, a place of rest, of purpose, of memory. The next morning, training resumed. Sarah stood at the far end of the range, instructing 3 new candidates. One of them asked nervously, "Ma'am, what's the first thing a sniper learns?" She thought for a moment, then spoke softly. "You wait longer than they expect. You shoot faster than they can blink." They wrote it down. She smiled slightly, and the next legend began. Far away in a sealed room in Langley, an analyst reviewed a classified file. Raven protocol reactivated. Below it, 1 line in red ink, asset status operational. But Sarah didn't know that. Or maybe she did and just didn't care. Some stories don't end with medals or headlines. They end with a rifle, a silent oath, and a horizon worth walking toward. As she stepped off the range, a gust of wind carried a whisper across the snow. Not words, just the sound of closure, of something finally finished. Camera pans wide. Sarah walks alone toward the mountains, rifle slung across her back. Her silhouette cuts through the white, a single mark on a vast canvas. Voiceover fades in. Some legends are born, others are forged in fire, and some are both cut to black. Silence. Then a single line of text. Raven 1 status retired, but never forgotten.